Колыма и Чукотка, Дальний Восток России. Это уже не Сибирь, эта территория лежит ближе к Аляске.
Kolyma and Chukotka, the far east of Russia. This is not Siberia, it lies closer to Alaska. This large area of the Russian northeast remains thinly populated even after almost a century since the beginning of the industrial development of the region. In times more distant, it was inhabited by indigenous peoples who roamed the local tundra, driving herds of reindeer. Scattered tribes of Evens, Chukchi, Koryak, Itelmen, Yakut, Inuit, and others, known in Russia as the small people of the north because they are few in number. For 20 years, I lived in Kolyma, 20 years which flew like an instant.
Мне повезло прожить на Колыме 20 лет.
I am fortunate to have lived in Kolyma and to have grown close to the locals. We befriended each other. I heard their stories and recorded the living witnesses of the passing era, the keepers of the indigenous languages and native cultures. I met Vera Giuneut 9 years ago at Hebdenek, a traditional holiday of the Adventists. This is the local pagan New Year, filmed here in Magadan, which the natives of Kolyma have celebrated for ages at the summer solstice. The daughter of a Chukchi shaman, Vera Giuneut cherishes the customs of her father's tribe, the tales, songs, folk art, needlework, and handcrafts. The traditions of the Chukchi and the Evens, as well as their languages, differ greatly from each other. Kolyma was predominantly inhabited by the Evens. Chukotka, the homeland of the Chukchi, lies much further north. But there is something in common that unites all the tribes living in these parts. There is warmth, cooperation, kindness, and generosity inherent in all the aborigines of Kolyma. Otherwise, one simply cannot survive in such extreme climates during the long and harsh winter.
Я из Shamanского района, из поселка Chukchi. Там мои отец и мама жили.
I am a native of the Chaunsky region of Chukotka, the village of Chukchi. It was there where my mother and father lived. In those days they were called Chauchu, which means people rich in reindeer.
Когда коллективизация началась, все родители и мамины братья перекочевали в Белый Анадырский район.
When collectivization started, my parents and my cousins migrated to the village of Ust-Bielaya in the Anadyr region, and they began working in a kolkhoz.
Ну, естественно, олени стали общими. Мои родители переехали с тундры в поселок Ust-Bielaya.
Well, naturally, the reindeer became owned by the kolkhoz. My parents moved from the tundra to the village of Ust-Bielaya. My mother worked in a milk farm. She made cottage cheese. My father was a shepherd at a cattle farm.
А я училась в школе. Училась на одни пятерки.
As for me, I went to school and made good grades, only good grades. In those days, the 1950s, there were very few houses. In the village of Ust-Bielaya, yarangi were nestled on a hill by the bank of the river.
Мои родители были очень достойными людьми.
As I recall from my childhood, my parents were dignified people. They kept all the folk traditions of their tribe. Singing, done in a special way, the so-called throat singing, was of a special significance to my mother. She taught me to sing, to sew, and to do bead embroidery.
Отец мне брал на природу. Харивус, поймаем любую харивус там.
My father often took me hunting and fishing to the tundra. I remember we used to sit by the campfire and eat fish. He could foretell by the fish's bones what kind of fishing season to expect that year, how much fish would come spawning. Let's say we would catch grayling and fry the fish on the fire. He would carefully separate the flesh from bones, and looking at the bones would see how much fish there would be in the summer. My father knew nature well. He could foresee what kind of winter to expect and what kind of summer. He could foresee fire in the tundra or heavy frost. He determined this by the moss that the reindeer ate. He knew well where north, west, south, and east were. Without a compass and without a map, he always found his bearings with the help of the stars. April, May, June, and July, and going to the second arm, August, September, October, November, and December.
Так я понемножку у него научилась определять, какие травы лечебные.
Little by little, I learned about medicinal herbs, which mushrooms were edible and which were poisonous. A fly agaric mushroom, only known as poisonous today, was believed to cure cancer. When we had lived in the tundra, before we were enrolled into the kolkhoz, we had been free, freedom-loving nomadic people. My father cured everybody who got sick with herbs, all of the neighbors. For some reason, he always used dried fly agaric mushrooms. Maybe because it was good for the cure of cancer.
Вот. Раньше не курили, не пили, пока не приехали с Аляски, пока не началась коллективизация.
In earlier days, Chukchi did not drink and did not smoke. That was before they moved here from Alaska and before the collectivization began. Despite the fact that we had to hide our drums, dog sleds, and festive clothing for rituals from the communists, we still preserved our traditional rituals.
С августа, на конце августа, начиналась забой на одежду, на оленей.
In the end of August, the killing of reindeer for traditional clothing would begin. The ritual took place under strict rules. From early morning, dog sleds were lined up outside. Small wooden planks were brought for making fire. Each small plank had 6 little holes. In the early days, fire was started with the help of such planks. Chukchi did not have matches.
Вот что я могу сказать? Знаете, все сейчас вспоминаю от родителей своих. И я очень горжусь ими, что они были достойными людьми, несмотря на то, что все отобрали.
What can I say? I remember my parents and feel very proud of them. They were dignified people despite the fact that all their possessions were taken away from them. The reindeer, personal property, everything. But they did not fall into despair. My parents started their life anew. They brought us up in the same spirit, just the way they were brought up by their parents. They passed all their customs on to us.
Отец, когда я, иногда приболею там, он мне всегда говорил, как тебе будет трудно, как бы тяжело тебе не было, как бы тебе больно не было, ты пой.
There were times when I got sick, my dad would always tell me, no matter how hard it is, beloved daughter, no matter how hard it can get, you continue to sing. Sing songs, jump, and move around because movement saves people. Kolyma and Chukotka aborigines settled here tens of thousands of years ago. Primitive hunters of mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, bison, and deer came to the north from Central and East Asia. Archaeologists have discovered dozens of ancient sites containing flint arrowheads, spears, knives, and scrapers. The earliest sites are about 8,500 years old. Dozens more recent sites have been found along the banks of the mountain rivers of the Chukotka Peninsula. In the mid-1970s, Soviet archaeologists discovered the remnants of an ancient culture at Wrangel Island, akin to the Paleo-Eskimo cultures of Arctic America. Charcoal from a fire pit dated this maritime culture to the 2nd millennium BC. It is the oldest Paleo-Eskimo site in Asia. Exploring the bottom of the Bering Strait, scientists may shed further light on how the North American continent came to be inhabited. The ancestors of Native Americans, Eskimos, and Aleuts have left many traces of their presence on the territory of the Russian Northeast. In Paleolithic times, there was a bridge between Northeast Asia and Alaska, and both territories were a single region, Beringia. There are many legends about the loss of mythical Atlantis, but we have never discovered traces of its existence. In contrast to that mysterious island, real Beringia actually went underwater about 10,000 years ago. This did not happen in one day, as the legendary Atlantis, but gradually. As the glaciers began to recede, vast territories of Chukotka and North America were released from the grip of the ice, and the sea level rose. Beringia was slowly inundated. Now it is covered by the Bering and Chukchi seas. As a result of crustal movement, two oceans, the Arctic and the Pacific, joined and formed the Bering Strait, and two continents, Eurasia and America, were divided. The warming trend continued. The life of the Chukotka natives was changed. They turned from mammoth hunting to deer hunting, as well as to fishing and whaling. The Stone Age, or Paleolithic, was over, and the New Stone Age, or Neolithic, had arrived. At a time in Europe when neither Athens nor Rome was founded, the Chukotka region was already inhabited by very skilled sailors and hunters, and they did not live in total isolation, but interacted with other northern territories, even as far away as Greenland. Judging by archaeological discoveries in Chukotka and the Kolyma River basin, the ancient inhabitants of this region initially led a semi-sedentary lifestyle. Much later they started to roam, following the herds of deer. The extreme climate, long winters, and extinction of large animals, such as mammoths and rhinoceroses, all led to the creation of the distinctive cultures of the small peoples of the north, unlike any other cultures, which remained largely unchanged until the early 20th century. It's good, right? Yes. I'm saying the same thing as you. This is just what I have so far. I'm giving this a try. I'll make the sound better. It seems to me that I made a mistake. The chorus should be sung more cheerfully. I'll add some reverberation, all kinds of effects, like the sounds of the sea in nature. We'll do it, we'll get it added. Birds and so forth.
Вот. Иногда я так лежала, вот, чувствую вот жар. Он меня берет в тундру и говорит, пойдем за дровами. Я с ними шла.
When I had a fever, my father took me with him to the tundra, saying that if I sweat up well, I would chase away the disease, and I would go with him, even though I was little. This was when we lived in the village. I felt free in the tundra. I would go wherever I wanted to. Well, naturally, you would go to the places where there was plenty of moss. Our parents had a herd of reindeer counting 1,200 or 1,500 head. This was just my father's herd, and my uncles from my mother's side had their reindeer as well, nearly 1,100 or 1,200 head. We did not hire any help. We did not keep hired help. We were shepherds ourselves. 8 huskies and we, the kids, helped out my parents to herd the reindeer.
Июнь-июль самый такой, как бы говорят, ответственная пора сейчас идет в тундре. Идет.
The months of June and July were the most important. During this time, we needed to save the reindeer from parasites, to find a water pool, enough moss for food, and pastures that would not be too cool or too hot. Shepherds today do the same. They pasture just like our ancestors pastured.
Конечно, родители мои очень многому научили. И шить, и петь, и танцевать.
My parents taught me a lot. They taught me to sew and to sing and to dance. Let's say we went with my father or my mother to pick up water and we saw a little seagull or some animal. My parents would tell me to try to dance like a seagull, move like a seagull, and I would dance imitating the movement of a seagull.
А вот эти вот мы, живущие народности севера, Чукчи, строго соблюдали чистоту.
And then, we native people of the north, Chukchi, would preserve strictly the purity of nature. We burned all waste, all the old stuff. Nothing was thrown away, not like people throw stuff around now. And for example, if a reindeer would catch a disease, its body would be buried in the ground so that predators would not get poisoned by infected meat.
Мы, конечно, мои родители уважали наших братьев, наших меньших.
My parents were always very respectful to animals, fox, bear, wolf, other animals. If my father hunted and killed a wolf, if he needed fur for his clothes, before he brought that carcass home, while it was still warm, he would play his buban, the shaman's drum, to assist the spirits passing to the higher world. In the same way as humans, who are not really dead for 3 days after their death, the animals' spirits too linger for 3 more days at the place where they were killed. That is why the Chukchi always drum after the hunt to appease the spirits of the animals. And after 3 days, they would bury the carcass in the ground.
Когда собаку, допустим, старая собака стала, оленегонка старая, они опять-таки, прежде чем убить, собака чувствует.
And when the deer-running dogs are getting old, they feel it and understand that they will die soon. The Chukchi would kill the dog so it would not suffer from old age. But first, they would give it some thick, fatty, dried intestines. And, like they do for a wolf, they would see it off on the long road to the higher world. They would give it plenty of water and play the drums. All these traditions have been preserved by my people. Happy holidays, friends. Happy New Year. Success, health to you. The song is called The Meeting of Friends, sung in the Chukchi language. Let us dance.
Что я могу сказать? У нас еще были ездовые олени свои. У меня свои, у брата свои, у отцов свои.
What else can I add? We had our own riding reindeer. I had them, my brother, my father. We all had riding reindeer. I had a white one, as white as you can imagine, only the eyes were black. Not a single spot on his skin. We learned to ride reindeer from an early age. We learned it from an early age so that later on we would not do a faux pas, so to speak. We were taught how to herd reindeer, from what side to approach them, which way the wind would come the next day, where to bring the herd in case of bad weather. We were taught how to butcher the carcass of the reindeer, how to boil and dry the meat, how to dress the skins, how to sew clothes from furs, and how to embroider. We, Chukchi, embroider only white and black kamus, fall fur. Soon the reindeer would be slaughtered. The fur pile is not long but short. Different patterns were used for torbasa, fur boots, kuchlyanki, coats, fur trimmings on the sleeves and the hoods. From white and black reindeer skins, embroideries and ornaments were made for men. This craft was learned since early childhood. I am very grateful to my parents that we were raised with dignity and did not lose our spirit even in the hardest times. From the middle of the first millennium BC, Aboriginal Kolyma and Chukotka lived mainly by hunting mammals. They wore enveloping, well-tailored, waterproof fur clothing. They lived in semi-subterranean dwellings built of whale bones with a canopy of reindeer hide. These shelters were heated by the fat of slaughtered animals. The natives traveled in fast, uncovered kayaks and large canoes made with walrus skin. The transition from hunting on land to oceanic fishing and hunting was the first significant shift in the subsistence methods of the ancient inhabitants of Chukotka. Centuries later, a second, even more important shift occurred in the tundra, where reindeer hunters began to domesticate the herds, giving rise to nomadic pastoralism, a type of subsistence which is more productive than hunting. This was the only way to take advantage of the huge moss pastures of the Northeast. Scientists argue about the exact time reindeer herding originated in Kolyma and Chukotka, but we may state with confidence that it occurred significantly later than the advent of sea hunting. With the development of reindeer husbandry, there was a shift from a primitive matriarchy to a patriarchy. The concept of private property was developed, and the rudiments of a militaristic democracy began at that time, as evidenced by many archaeological monuments, such as fortified settlements or places of carnage with the remnants of bony armor, arrowheads, and other weapons.
У нас там тоже есть лекарственные растения. Вот иван-чай растет.
Here in Chukotka, we have many medicinal herbs, for example fireweed or ivan-chai, and wild potato, which in English is called spring beauty or claytonia. This plant has tubers that taste like potatoes, and on top it has little flowers that look like ordinary potato flowers, only the flowers are stark white.
Нерка называется рыба. Ловилась там. Мы прямо ловили, прямо руками ловили, лазали вот так вот в озеро.
We used to catch fish in the stream. The name of it is nerka. We caught the fish with our hands right out of the water. I caught exactly what was needed for dinner. We never took more than we needed, just enough to eat, not more. That's what we would take from the river. We never threw away fish. Unlike today, a lot of fish is thrown away. The fish is ripped open, eggs are taken out, and the fish body is tossed away.
А там около озера росла вот такой, какой-то, как типа вот это вот цветочек. Ну, она шестигранная такая. А внутри какая-то красная с белым.
I remember near the lake there grew a little flower with 6 petals and a round center. A red and white flower with pale green leaves, wide and large. The leaves would cover the flower right before the sun set. The flower would open up during the night. We called it the moonflower. Dew would gather inside the flower. If you touched the flower, you could hear the drops rattling about inside. So beautiful, can you see? In the moonlight, the flower on a slim stem was shivering and moving. In the morning, the leaves would close up, and at night would open up again. This lake, now unfortunately, is spoiled by geologists and gold diggers. Everything around it got trashed. There are no more fish and no more flowers. What a pity.
У нас на Чукотке очень красивые места. Очень красивые места. Лесотундра, деревья большие, березы.
We have beautiful nature in Chukotka, a mix of forest and tundra. Big trees, birch trees, many conifers, and larch trees. Everything grows. All kinds of fish, more than a dozen kinds. They are only in the rivers. And in the sea there are plenty of salmon, caplin, cod. Here is another song. It's called A Letter from the City to the Village.
tai nghèo thì nói từ ghé ngót khó rì người tai ngót kinh em nụ nghèo xin đi gầm nên phải chờ kinh ho 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 ho
Thank you, friends.
У нас как бы фамилии, у нас только фамилия, имя, отчества нету. Допустим, я когда сильно болела,
We, the Chukchi people, have only last names, no first names, no middle names. When I fell very ill, my father cured me. He was the one who saved me. We dried different herbs in advance. If I fell ill, he would give me herbal mixtures to drink. When I was born, he called me Tomga, which means newly born. When I nearly died and was in a lethargic sleep, I remember this well, I was walking up the hill and there was a field with people dressed in lovely white clothes. They sang and danced as I was approaching them. It was so real. I was walking by myself, not knowing whom to talk to. The people only nodded to me and did not respond. And above there was a light as if from Jesus Christ. I went uphill and then came back, following this beam of light which showed me the way. I woke up in the Uranga from the bright light. It was very bright, even though it was night. It was bright, bright. My eyes were blinded. I looked around and saw my father sitting with the drum next to me, humming the same song I sang to you. That's what helped me to come back to life, as if I was reborn. That's when my father changed my name to Giuneut, meaning unknown. Sleds, domesticated reindeer, and dogs appeared in the Chukotka region relatively recently, perhaps some 700 years ago. However, in the distant past, when hunting or fishing grounds were suddenly depleted, whole bands of natives died out, as happened with those Yukagirs who lived on the Omalan River, when the deer suddenly changed their usual migratory routes. The Bronze Age never arrived in Chukotka. A few bronze artifacts managed to trickle in from the south, but then contact with the agrarian cultures of Siberia gradually faded away, and at a time when their Siberian contemporaries had thoroughly mastered iron, the Kolyma aborigines remained in the Stone Age. Nonetheless, these skilled hunters were not only able to exist in such harsh conditions, but also adapted to feel completely comfortable and content in an area where, centuries later, people from more southern latitudes needed all the advantages of modern technology just to survive. Even well-equipped Russian immigrants were able to settle in the Northeast only by relying on the rich experience of the Aboriginal people. Their unique methods of survival in such harsh climatic conditions helped settlers from the European part of Russia to adapt to the north.
Мама, как мама? Мама, я хочу сказать, что у них, рассказывала мама, что у них тоже были свадьбы.
My mother used to tell me about a wedding ritual. During their honeymoon, they traveled all over the tundra. My parents made it to all the areas of Chukotka, as far as Naukan and Ulan. It happened so that my mother's brothers did not want to let my mother marry my father. He was 18 years older than my mother. She was very young. She had braids as thick as a fist. She walked with her head up, proud. So my father decided to kidnap her. When winter came, he did kidnap her. She took the dogs and went to watch the herd. My father was staying with his mother at the time, so he came after my mother and took her away. She sent the main dog, deer-running dog, back to her brothers, while the rest of the dogs stayed to guard the herd. That's how my father got my mother. He did not want to accept his fate. The brothers got worried, wondering why the dogs had come alone. Something must have happened. They rushed to the place where the reindeer were, only to find out that their sister was missing. They went to look for her using traces of the dog sleds as marks. One of the brothers caught up with my father, who told him, "You did not want to give her away willingly, so I took her, and I will not give her back." So that's how she stayed with my father. Later on, my mother's brothers got married themselves, starting their own families, and put up their own yarangi. My mother had 3 brothers, Tarakarin, Tayenterev, and Kachnau. My mother's name was Elem. She used to be called Tinenu, and then became Elem. That's how they got married. My mother used to tell me that their honeymoon lasted for a whole month. They traveled all around the tundra. They received gifts from many people. Some would give them a reindeer, some would give them a skin of a wolverine. They did not come back empty-handed from the honeymoon, but brought 2 sleds full of gifts. In the 17th century, Russian Cossacks came to the north. Settlement of the Cossacks in Chukotka was a catalyst for the first steps from the Stone Age to modern civilization. The Cossacks' arrival ended the millennia of isolation of the northern ethnic groups, but also brought new problems, such as the gradual loss of their language, culture, and traditions. It is important to note that in addition to the negative aspects of the collision between the 2 civilizations, the development of the northeastern territories by the Cossacks also brought considerable benefits to the Aboriginal people. In particular, the Russians stopped the permanent wars among the natives. At that time, the inhabitants of Chukotka were divided into 2 groups in terms of their societal mores and structure. One group was the settled sea hunters, Siberian Eskimo, coastal Chukchi, Koryak, and Kyrgyz. The other group was composed of nomadic reindeer herders, the Chukchi and Yukagirs. These native tribes were fiercely at odds with one another over scarce grazing land. There were constant skirmishes. They sometimes eliminated whole bands of their neighbors. Deer were driven away or captured, and herdsmen were killed. Survivors were enslaved by the severe and merciless victors. There was a bitter struggle for survival in the tundra. Peak intertribal battles for grazing land occurred in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. The strongest and most aggressive bands in the tundra were the Chukchi reindeer herders. They were more numerous and carefully avoided the zone of Russian influence. Hard pressed by the Chukchi, the Koryak, Kyrgyz, and Yukagirs sought and found protection among the Russian immigrants. The Chukchi and Evens continued to retain much of their native customs, rites, and rituals, even after many of them were converted to Christianity by Russian missionaries in the 18th and 19th centuries. Russian traders brought food, textiles, guns and gunpowder, iron, knives, and factory goods in exchange for their furs and leather. But on the whole, the culture of the indigenous inhabitants of Kolyma and Chukotka remained at the level of the Neolithic. Collectivization of the Soviet period was an attempt to forcibly raise the level of technological development of the Aborigines of Kolyma and Chukotka. In other words, to tear them from their familiar way of life, which had lasted for thousands of years, and instantly transfer them from the Stone Age to the era of electricity and gasoline, abruptly hastening the more gradual transition begun by the first settlers from Central Russia. In addition, the Soviet policies displaced hundreds of thousands of people, including many Aboriginal people who, stripped of their traditional livelihood, were forced to abandon their ancestral lands and nomadic existence. They had to adapt to a settled life among people of diverse ethnic backgrounds where few others spoke their native tongue. Their children attended Soviet schools and learned Russian. The extinction of small languages is a common problem for the entire modern world. Globalization and unification lead to the disappearance of the dialects of minority ethnic groups. Attempts to artificially cultivate the indigenous languages of the North in the absence of the traditional way of life and economic structure have not met with success. Chukotka natives ever more frequently migrate from the tundra to the cities and villages and are urbanizing increasingly. The indigenous young people do not utilize the language of their ancestors, but speak Russian exclusively, seeing no point in preserving their native tongue.
Моя земля, мать. Моя земля, мать, кормилица. На ней мы выросли, по ней мы босиком бегали. По ней мы стадо пошли.
My land is my mother. My land is my mother and my nanny. We grew up here. We ran barefoot on this land. This is our land, our nanny. How can one not understand it? This is our mother. There are no words to say that this is not my land. Kolyma is the land of the Evens. They have lived there from generation to generation. Our land is Chukotka. Even though the climate here is tough, this is our land. This land feeds us. We protect it as the apple of our eye. We pray to thunder and to the strong wind. Our God is everything that is around us. We protect our land. The land gives us medicinal herbs. It feeds the reindeer, other animals, birds, and us people.
Поэтому легенды, сколько сказок сказано, сколько этих вот быль про природу, про птиц, сказки всякие.
We preserve our legends. There have been many fairy tales and legends about this land and about its birds and animals. The songs of the wind, the songs of the whispering leaves. These songs teach us to be kind. Nature itself teaches us.
Будь добрее, природа сама. Она нас, вот к любому дереву подойди, просто прижмись. Только не надо вот старые прижимать.
You come up to any tree, simply cling to it. Only not to the old tree, it is bad. Cling to the young one. Now is the time to be outside in the fresh air.
Конечно, если бы я белая была, я бы уехала к брату. Племянником бы поехала, стадо. Я бы там отдохнула бы.
If I lived in Ust-Bielaya, I would have gone to my brother to be closer to my nephew who lives in the tundra. I would go to rest there. I would go to the places where we used to live as nomads. Everything is dear to my heart there. All is as if it is on the palm of one's hand in the tundra. My parents used to know everything about the tundra, where to go with the reindeer, all the places. They would get to the right destinations without any mistakes, using stars to find the way and to locate north, south, east, and west.
А мальчишек вот этих вот сыновей учили, как строить, как где нарты ездовые.
They used to teach boys, their sons, how to build dog sleds. The sleds can be of different models. There are the ones that are solid, used to transport the entire household, the canopies, yoranga, and household goods. The festive clothes were transported separately, so were the utensils for making fire. Each sled was pulled by a reindeer that belonged to a certain member of the family. There was a time when we roved in the tundra. I was always asked to catch the reindeer for the third sled, to tie it down and harness it. Nowadays, women continue to dress reindeer skins and to make fur clothes. The shepherds bring the herd to water pools and places rich in reindeer moss.
А осенью как любят грибы олени. За 50 километров чуют запах грибов.
It is amazing how reindeer love to indulge on mushrooms in the fall. They can sense mushrooms within 50 kilometers. When they start running towards mushrooms, not a single dog could catch them. They would come to the mushroom place, eat as much as they could, and then they would calm down. Reindeer are true mushroom eaters.
И вот мне задавали вопрос, как вы, народы севера, не мылись? Очень просто.
There is a question about us northern people not washing for long periods of time. That is simple to explain. Reindeer have long pile. It is not easy to really take a good look at it, only if you use a microscope, to see the tiny air-filled hair, hardly noticeable. That's how pile absorbs moisture easily. Reindeer fur absorbs the sweat and the smell of a human body quite well. We are sometimes asked if we get ill with rashes or other diseases. We did not fall ill because we used to eat real food, fresh and pure, such as fish, meat, herbs, and mushrooms. Even wild potatoes grow here. We used to dry them.
Пили молоко после телят весной. Оленей прям такое густое молоко. Ох, какое вкусное. А сваришь, она как сыр стоит.
We used to drink milk after the baby calves were born in the spring. Reindeer milk is very thick then and very tasty. If you boil reindeer milk, it becomes like cheese. It is also sweet. This happens only in the spring. In the fall, during the slaughtering of the reindeer, the meat is dried. Usually at least a dozen reindeer get slaughtered at a time. The skins go to make clothes, and the meat is dried for next year. How do we save and revive the vanishing culture of the Aboriginal Kolyma and Chukchi? Enthusiasts of this movement hope to realize their goal by writing songs, performing ceremonies, dances, crafts, and organizing various tribal celebrations like Hevdenek, the Adventist New Year. Linguists at the University of Magadan study Aboriginal languages and compile dictionaries. The indigenous poets and writers create poems and stories in their native languages. But all their efforts are going to waste because the younger generation sees no point in preserving their native languages. Aside from some philologists from the University of Magadan, only the elders still remember and can express themselves in the Chukchi, Evens, Koryak, or Yukagir languages. Now, almost no one uses their native tongues at home. There is a beautiful lake in Kolyma named in honor of the American writer Jack London. At the end of the 19th century, when the gold rush started, Jack London went to Alaska but stayed only about a year before illness struck, and he returned to California. The harsh climate, long winter, cold, and privation had done their work. But even such a short stay in the north gave him a wealth of subjects for stories and novels. And if one lives among the natives in these severe lands longer, how many stories, how many human destinies with all their bizarre twists and ups and downs may one come to know? How do you write music? Where do the music images come from? My songs? Yes, your songs.
Музыкальное, что-то я с детства. Вот идет, допустим, я иду на рыбалку с отцом. Он мне говорит: доча, спой мне мою песню.
The music has been with me since childhood. We used to go fishing, for example, with my father, and he would ask me to sing. To make my voice stronger, I would sing as I walked. Sometimes, when I sat on my father's shoulders, I would also sing. Then my father would ask me to sing songs of my ancestors to remember all the ones he had taught me. The voices of my ancestors live inside me. That's why my father used to ask me if I remembered this or that song.
Ну, вечером, что ли, вот когда тихо делаю телевизор, вышиваю бисером, и вдруг начинает вот во мне вырождаться вот какая-то вот нота, что ли.
Sometimes in the evening, when I turn the TV down and sit to embroider with beads, a note or two stirs inside of me. This elevates my mood. It just happens. I do not have a piano or any other instrument, just a song.
Мелодия.
More correctly, a tune.
Вот это, наверное, благодаря отцу вот это, я научилась вот это определять.
Most likely it was thanks to my father that I learned to sing a correct note. He used to tell me to listen to the birds singing, to try to sing after her and with her.
Вот это.
And the bird replies to me,
Я типуик. И она отвечает типуик. В общем, вот так вот. В общем, наверное, благодаря отцу вот это. У меня
Thanks to my father, it all came about. He put me on the right track. He used to tell me the most important thing is to sing. Everything else would come into place. What was the difference between the songs of your mother and those of your father?
Я забыла вам сказать, женский род. Мужчина говорит на «р», а женщины на «ц».
I forgot to tell you about the female gender. Men speak with an er and women speak with a ts. I will demonstrate the songs of my parents, of my father. Most likely he composed them himself.
Каждый человек, вот каждый рождается в Чукче, песню свою должен сочинить уже вот с 5 лет.
My father used to say that everyone who is born to this world, every Chukcha born into this world, needs to create a song of his own. Starting from age 3 to 5 years old, when a child plays, he starts to sing. That's how he will go through life, with this very song. Nobody taught us how to do that. My father used to tell me, sing as nature sings. Look and learn from nature. Listen how the earth is moaning. Do you hear the earth moaning when it is not doing well? Do you hear? Be very quiet, and you can hear it right away.
Вот отцова. Вот это отца песня, которую я пела. Вот.
This was his own song. My mother's song is different.
Вот это вот.
This is my mother's song.
Вот. Я маме спросила, мама, скажи, как ты помнишь?
I once asked my mother, Mother, tell me, how do you remember the songs of your parents, of your grandmother, great-grandmother, and great-grandfather? How do you remember it all? She answered that she remembered the songs because of certain holidays. For example, the Feast of a Little Reindeer, when the reindeer are slaughtered to make clothing. Then Chukchi would sing all night long, and all night long the campfires were burning and people were listening to these songs. When the old men die, when they feel death approaching, every person feels death approaching, they say, sing my song and pass it on to your children. That is how, from generation to generation, people of the north, the Chukchi, pass on their songs.
А как я начала петь? Не знаю, я вот иду там за водой или за дровами.
How did I begin to sing? I don't know. I remember when I went to get water or pick up wood for the fire, I would hum a tune, and one thing after another, a song was born. These songs have been with me from my childhood. These songs are without words, just a tune. My mother used to say, here is my daughter coming back with her song. That is how it happened. I began singing slowly. Vera Dmitrievna, could you tell me about the songs written to the verse of Antonina Gmiteval? This is a creative process between the two of us. Tell us about her, your sister. You said that you had one father and different mothers.
Да, это мама еще рассказывала, когда уже чуть подросли, уже постарше стали. Антонина Александровна, я ее спросила.
Yes, that's right. My mother told me about it when we grew older. Antonina Alexandrovna, I asked her why she did not look like me. We still lived in the Anadar region. She moved there to work and I still lived there. She lived in the village of Ust-Bielaya. We already knew then that we were sisters, that we had one father and different mothers. So what can you do? She writes poems and I sing. She has good verses and I am compelled to sing them. I felt compelled to create something good, kind, and cheerful.
Так и хочется сочинить что-то хорошее, доброе, такое задорное.
I write songs so that we can pass them on to our children, to make sure that we have not lived in vain, that we move further. Life goes on. I sing with my grandson. He is a grown-up, 16 years old. When he was 1 year old, I used to sing to him and he sang along with me.
Что с Антонином? С Антонином мы как бы связь не теряем. Созваниваемся, прихожу.
What about Antonina? We keep in touch, call each other. I come to visit her. She is ill and is suffering from back pain. She rarely visits us. I come to visit her more often. It is on my way when I go to see my daughter.
Так она очень готовит, Вера. Так меня прямо хочется рядом с тобой сидеть и петь и петь.
She tells me, Vera, I just want to sit next to you and to sing. Sit and sing. Our parents' genes also count.
Отец пел хорошо. Мать мастерица была на все руки.
Our father used to sing very well. My mother had hands of gold. She cooked and did embroidery. There is a perception among the Magadan scientific community that in order to preserve the native languages, Russia must draw on the example of the reservations in the United States and arrange the same national settlements for the indigenous peoples of the North, where they could live like their ancestors, go hunting and fishing, and also do the traditional crafts. Whether such a step can resolve this complex situation, only time will tell. But today we can only conclude that the unique culture of the northern peoples is increasingly disintegrating in modern urban civilization. No matter how unfortunate, the chances of its preservation are less and less. Vera Giuneut, the daughter of a northern shaman, sings about it in her sad songs.